Russell is the director of the Constitution Unit at the University College London. She joins us live now via Skype from Cornwall. Madam, thank you so much for joining us here on Al Jazeera. So Scotland's highest court of appeal says this was a cynical ploy to shut down debate. But Boris Johnson at the time said that actually what he was doing was bringing an end to a very long parliamentary session, and that anything else was effectively a happy coincidence as far as he was concerned. I mean, is that what it boils down to, the intent rather than the action itself?
No, well, I think it's a bit of both, because the action itself, despite what Boris Johnson says, was a highly unusual action. It's very normal for Parliament to be prorogued every year between one session and the next, but normally a prorogation lasts just a few days. This prorogation is lasting for 5 weeks, which is the longest since 1930. And of course, we're in the middle of a political crisis where there's plenty for the MPs want to hold the government to account for. We could be heading for a no-deal Brexit, and MPs want to be quizzing the Prime Minister and his ministers about their negotiation strategy and about the preparations for a no-deal Brexit. So most people agree, almost everybody agrees, that this is a highly unusual action. The question is whether it's illegal. And there you've got some different opinions, as we heard. The Scottish courts say that it is. The English court didn't actually find in Johnson's favour. They just said that they didn't think this was a matter that the judges could ultimately decide, that it was a matter for politics, not law. So that's really the question that will be the key question for the Supreme Court. I think everybody agrees it's unusual. Virtually everybody agrees that he has done this because he wants to evade scrutiny. The question is it within his powers to do so, really? So
is that then the decision that the Supreme Court is going to face, whether it's a legal or political issue?
Essentially, yes. So the English court said that this was something that politics needed to resolve because it's not actually written down in law anywhere how long a prorogation should be. The question is whether it's against precedent, whether it's against convention, which it clearly is. So the question is, will the judges want to step in to reinforce precedent? It's a bit of a big step for the judges, but the Scottish court clearly thinks this is important. And given that Parliament is at the very centre of our system, the government only is the government because it has the confidence of Parliament. To be shutting down Parliament at a crucial political moment is a really big and controversial step on the part of the government. So we'll have to see what the Supreme Court says. This issue could get bigger, actually.
I guess in all of this, though, of course, time is of the essence. So, it then goes to the Supreme Court, assuming that they then also find it unlawful. In a sense, almost the point has been achieved of eating up time before reaching the fateful date of the 31st of October. What can be done retroactively, or are we just speculating a bit too far, perhaps?
Well, some time will have been eaten up, but the Supreme Court is expected to meet next week. So, we may have lost a week or a week and a half or even 2 weeks of parliamentary sitting, but we could still gain 3 to 3.5 weeks of sitting, which otherwise we wouldn't be having because of the prorogation. So I think there's still a lot to play for here.
I mean, a lot of other governments, of course, or in other nations, there's a head of government and a head of state. Here in the UK, it's a slightly particular situation because the head of state is the Queen. It's something that was discussed when Boris Johnson first asked to prorogue Parliament. Could the Queen play a different kind of role here, or constitutionally, is she very limited in what she can do?
She is essentially, on this issue, she's very limited. There's another issue where she might be able to act, which is the whole question of if Boris Johnson ultimately loses the confidence of the House of Commons, which is quite possible with all of this going on, whether the Queen would actually be able to sack him. And I think that there she does have a bit of leeway. But essentially, for so long as the Prime Minister has the confidence of the House of Commons, the Queen is duty-bound to do as he requests. This does make us different to some other countries, for example, where you have elected presidents, countries like Italy or Ireland, where although the president is a fairly kind of nominal head of state, because they have some democratic legitimacy, if the Prime Minister takes a very controversial decision, they do in the end have some power to overrule. That doesn't really apply with the Queen. She's in a delicate position. She always has to be guided by ministers in what she does. So nobody is suggesting that she behaved improperly here. The question is whether the advice that was given to her by the Prime Minister was improper, and that's what the Scottish court has ruled on today.
I guess very complicated times for everyone in the UK right now. Meg Russell, a UK constitutional expert, madam, thank you.
Thank you.